Sahana vavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryang karavavahai, Tejasvina vadhitamastu, Ma vidvishawahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Parthaya pratibodhitam bhagavata Narayanena swayam Vyasena gratitam purana munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita Amrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadasha Adhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim. O Mother, Bhagavad Gita, I repeatedly meditate on you, who are the 18 chapters in the middle of the Mahabharata, composed by the ancient sage Vyasa, taught for the benefit of Partha, that means us, by the Lord Narayana himself, the goddess, the shower of the nectar of Advaita, the enemy of rebirth. So last week, the verses were significant, and to make them more significant, we will go through another relatively detailed analysis from verse 62 to 66, just so that they make a good impression, because they are the last verses of the Bhagavad Gita teaching, and everything after will be just the closing. So the verse 62 was in this section of devotion in reference to karma yoga. That means, how do we devote using the means called karma yoga? And that was a section, verse 62. So therefore, verse 62 was the last verse in that section. Verse 62 said, surrender to him with your whole heart. Everyone has a degree of control over their actions, over what we do. But where we don't have any control whatsoever is the results, what happens to us every single day, the events that come up. Therefore, when Krishna says, surrender to him with your whole heart, what is this him to whom we are surrendering? Who is this him? The answer is him in the form of what happens before us. This is called our destiny or fate, or in Sanskrit, our prarabdha karma. So this means whatever happens every single moment is what? Is him in the form of what is in front of us. Therefore, every moment, every opportunity is presented for us to turn into a devotional manner, a devotional attitude, because it is not just an event, it is much more than just the event. Therefore, knowing this, the question then begs, what is the only level of control we do have in reference to what does arise before us? That's called our prarabdha. Think, how can I most intelligently make use of what is before me? How do I most intelligently handle what is arising right now? We are with someone. How do I most intelligently have a conversation? We're going to the shopping mall. How do I most intelligently have an experience, and most intelligent, most efficient kind of experience? One that is encompassing this devotional attitude. For example, suppose that there is a doubt. Then a question begs, how do I most intelligently deal with this doubt? We have options. Option one, ask. Or option two, what is a less intelligent way than asking? Not asking. Why? In order to save face. I don't want to appear like I don't know. That is a not intelligent way. Another example is emergency happens. What is an intelligent way to handle an emergency? We mitigate it using whatever means we have available to us. What is the less intelligent way to deal with that? Look around and see who's going to act first. Only then I'm going to get permission to act. And asking this question, what question? This very question, what is the most intelligent way to deal with things right now, is to acknowledge that I am a participant. I, as a jiva, am a participant in this vast order called Ishvara's order, which is a product of cause and effect. Everything that has happened before is now arising in a form of this. It's called the effect. Therefore, to acknowledge that I am a participant, that you're a participant in Ishvara's order, when right now, because when are things not happening, is to engage our mind, therefore to apply, last week, Buddhi Yoga, to apply our intelligence. And then the verse continues, what's going to happen? By his grace, he said, you will obtain Shantihi. By doing this, what is the most intelligent way to deal with this right now? What's going to happen? I gain Shantihi. What does Shantihi mean? It means I'm going to enjoy a level of relative calmness, relative tranquility. Why? Because nothing here belongs to me. Isn't it true that all, if not most, anxieties arise from one single fundamental issue, and that is ownership? Sense of ownership, trying to own something, thinking it's mine, right? My children, my wife, my business, my money, my bank, my work, my intelligence. Therefore, to release this, because the fact is, it is not, none of it is yours. And therefore, the product of this is Shantihi, a relative release from this idea that everything is mine. And then you're going to ask, then how do we fill that in? What do we do other than now thinking that it's mine? What filler do we add in? We just answered by asking, what can I most intelligently contribute right now before me? And this is what is called to be an instrument of God. What does it mean to not be an instrument of God? To always take ownership. Therefore, it's called ahamkara, an individual who has to get it their way. Now, verse 63, we have moved out to that section now, devotion in reference to karma yoga. Verse 63 was the next section between verse 63 and 66, which is the summary of karma yoga and jnana yoga. And what did Krishna say in verse 63? He said, the most secret knowledge, Arjuna, has been expounded to you by me. Who's Arjuna? We are Arjunas, the students, learning, ascertaining Krishna's word through the means of the Bhagavad Gita. So what does this mean? This knowledge is an open secret. It is open, it is public domain. But it doesn't mean just because it is public domain that it's going to be summoned, is it? In other words, just like the Upanishads say, this knowledge, as much as open as it is not ascertained through mere recitation of the verses. It is not, the truth is not ascertained by just mere retentive power, by memorizing, holding the sin, holding the motto in the head. How is it ascertained? Only one way, by having a burning desire to understand what are the Upanishads talking about. That kind of burning desire that it's literally life or death. Have you ever been in that situation? You knew this was an absolute must. Like, no, I have to work. I have to do this. I have to go there. I have to help them. I have to help my mom, my dad. It's an absolute must. It's a no-brainer. It's a burning desire. That kind of desire alone will make the person understand I am Brahman. I am the whole. And then the verse 63 continued and it said, okay, having taken now the Bhagavad Gita into account, the whole teaching, having taken that into account, what's going to happen? Yatechasi tata kuru. Do as you wish, Arjuna. In other words, only once the person, the student, has gone through 18 chapters, only then the teacher confidently says, now do as you wish. I am not worried. Compared to chapter 1 or chapter 2, you're free of all this. Don't worry. You're other than dharma, adharma. You're a different order of reality. Okay, now do as you wish. That's going to be a disaster because the person is going to misinterpret that. Therefore, only after going through the values and going through the higher and lower nature of reality and going through Ishvara's order, only then Krishna with confidence says, Arjuna, having said everything that was said, do as you wish. I am not worried that you're going to goof up. And even if you will, you still have the Gita behind you to make the right correction. You always have something to fall back on. Do as you wish. And therefore, now the student is free to pursue and continue living as always, but with a certain repertoire of skills. Skills as contained in the Gita, which is the direct word of God. And therefore, it is a very important message to give this kind of confident statement to the student. Krishna is not saying, oh, you need to depend on me. You need to come back. No, we have done our part. You can now go into the world with this knowledge because there's nothing more to know other than what we have already gone through. Therefore, this is a statement of confidence. And then verse 64, Krishna said, again, Arjuna, you are my dear friend, because through the story Mahabharata, you know that Krishna and Arjuna have been friends for a long time. So in one way, we could treat it like that. Another way we could say is, Arjuna, you're a very open-minded student. You're coming back and you're listening, right? Very few people want to know this. They want to know other than this. Therefore, for that reason, I want to tell you one last time. And what does Krishna want to say one last time? He says very clear-cut, Arjuna, you have two paths. One, become a karma yogi with duties in life and attain moksha, or take the path of sannyasa without any duties and take moksha. Karma yogi means, in most cases, the duties implies grihasta, a householder, one that is relatively involved in the world. And therefore, through that involvement, attain moksha. The other path is give it all up or be like a hermit and then pursue moksha through self-knowledge exclusively. Either those paths, that is up to you. Then verse 65 summarizes karma yoga. What does karma yoga mean? What does karma yoga mean? We have asked this question so many times. The answer, if you've noticed, is always different, isn't it? Because karma yoga is not black or white. It's such a huge topic. Whatever duties are enjoined, what does the word enjoin mean? Instructed, ordered. Whatever enjoined duties I have, whatever instructed duties are asking me, whatever the environment is asking me, that is an opportunity to look at that as Ishvara. Now the question comes, well, how specifically do I look at that as Ishvara? Then the answer comes, you say, how are duties performed? Are they performed unethically or are they performed ethically? They're always performed, in most cases, ethically. That's how we are. By default, we perform things by ethical standards. Now, if you just stop there and just do ethics, that is not karma yoga. What makes it karma yoga? How does a karma yogi transfer mere ethics into a spiritual practice that has double benefits? He says, or she says, this dharma, who is the one that ordains this dharma? Because of whom does this dharma exist? Who is the creator, the governor, the one has set up this universe? Ishvara. Therefore, to follow duties, how? Ethically, then you ask, but these ethics, they belong to whom? The creator of the ethics. But then you don't stop there. You say one step further. Who is this creator called Ishvara? And then you answer, he or she or it, Ishvara, the one, the cause of the universe, that's what Ishvara means, is the intelligent and material cause of all things. That means is the one that is the cause of time, space, and all objects in time and space, including all orders, laws and orders. And then you also say, what else is Ishvara? Ishvara is the one from whom all things arise, by which all things are sustained, and into whom all things resolve into. And you don't stop there. You go then, okay, but what is the truth of Ishvara? Because just to put things together, called the nimitta karanam, the intelligent cause, and the material cause, just to create materials and to put them together in a predictable, functional fashion, like a rose, that's material and it's intelligence. It's an intelligence. It's not just a blob of nothingness. It's intelligent. It's got nice aroma. For that intelligence to put together that material into a rose implies what? The intelligence must exist. The material must exist. Sat. What else does it mean? The intelligence to put together that material intelligently implies what? It has to be conscious. Chit. Therefore, even Ishvara depends on Sat and Chit, which is otherwise called Brahman. Therefore, again, tracing the order, every duty we put out into the world is based on ethics. The ordainer of those ethics is Ishvara. What is Ishvara? Ishvara is the one that creates all, sustains all, and into whom all things resolve, the intelligent and the material cause. The intelligent material cause further exists, and it has to be aware or has to be conscious in order to hold the universe together. Therefore, through this means, every ordinary action becomes a reminder of the full hierarchy, if you want to call it a hierarchy, of this Vedic vision of oneness, how it all resolves into pure existence consciousness, which you are. Then the verse further stated, then what is the consequence of this attitude? What attitude? The one that we just explained now. What is the consequence? Firstly, your binding likes and dislikes are neutralized. What are those binding likes and dislikes? What does the word binding mean? It means I must or else. I must, or otherwise I'm not going to have a wonderful time at all. In other words, what does this do? It makes the person do what has to be done versus doing them for the sake of self-pleasure. Every time we do it for the sake of self-pleasure, what does that do? It reinforces the individual, the ahamkara, which is the very thing that we're trying to free ourselves of. Therefore, by doing things, what needs to be done according to what the environment is asking, that's called our swadharma, our duty, we are slowly forgetting what? Our personal samskaras, our personal vasanas. Isn't it true when you stop talking about something for a while, you forget about it eventually? But what do we do usually? We always mention our problem. Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I want to talk to you about something. Every time we talk, it seems like we're fixing, but we're actually giving it more water every time. So it's kind of like you chop it off and then you put some water. Chop it off, put some water. And it seems like progress, but there's a much better way. And therefore, just to focus, what is that better way? To focus on what needs to be done. What else is the benefit? Clarity. What kind of clarity? Antakarana shuddhi. What does this mean? It means the mind's able to understand subtle topics. What kind of topics? For example, chapter 4, verse 18. What does it, chapter 4, verse 18 of the Gita say? The wise one is one who sees no action in action and sees action in no action. It's like, well, what does this mean? Okay. The wise one, let's analyze this. The wise one is the one who sees no action in action. In fact, let's take a hand. What does this mean? Okay, the hand is moving right now. The hand is acting, yeah? But what is not moving? Which part has no action? Don't say the background, please.
Atma.
What? The light. Excellent, excellent. So in other words, despite seeing this which has action, what is that which has no action? And the wise one is line 1, who sees no action, the light in action. In other words, what does this mean in relative to the Jiva, Jagat Ishvara? You, Brahman, are the one who are lending existence to that which moves, to that which has form, names and forms. You, the unchanging one, Nirvikalpa, Nirguna, are the one who are lending existence to Saguna, to the world, which is always in action, always moving. And then line 2, it says, the wise one is who sees action in inaction. What does this mean? Well, there's 2 interpretations. Number 1, when an ordinary person looks into, for example, a wall, right? The wall is not moving. The wall's got no action. What does an ordinary person do? Oh, it's not moving. There's no action there. You know, a quiet day. Oh, nothing's happening in my life. There's no action there. But what does a wise one say? No, there's something behind it. What is that behind? Potential. Potential action, even though I don't see it, is there behind that inaction. The wise one is who sees action. What kind of action? Potential action in inaction, that which does not move. Therefore, it's meant to reveal the thoroughness, the depth of the wise person's vision. Interpretation 2, you can say, is to see action. What is action? Forms, maya. To see action, forms, appearing in the field of existence. Appearing in the field of existence, which is no action, which is inaction. Therefore, you start to think about these statements and go, it's quite confusing, but what can I extract out of this statement? And that's how this Antakarana Shuddhi works, through the means of what? Karma Yoga. Yes, Paul.
How do you relate this with the primordial inaction, normally referred to as Yoga Nidra? Yoga Nidra, in which Lord Vishnu is supposed to be all the time, and the same thing, what probably Einstein referred to as nothing moves until nothing happens until something moves.
Yeah, that's nothing. So in other words, it's not there now, but it's in potential. Just like tomorrow for Bao, there's a potential for Bao, and it's not there yet, but only tomorrow is going to come. Okay, so we call that Maya potential, in potential. And then verse 66 was Jnana Yoga summary. 2 lines. Give up Dharma. Give up Dharma, please. Bye-bye. No. Okay, so we analyze it. Upon analysis, it means actually give up Dharma and Adharma. In other words, give up Punya Papa, which implies give up both action, because either Dharma or Adharma is action. It's just action. So give up all action. But then we brought an objection. We said, how can you give up actions? Because no matter what we do, actions cannot be given up. We cannot exhaust actions because we cannot exhaust our karmas through action because there's too many karmas. And we call it, once again, in potential. We cannot stop karmas. We cannot just stop and do nothing. You just sit like this all day, right? Do nothing. It's impossible, because to pursue dharma, artha, kama, to pursue security, wealth, pleasures in life implies I have to go out there and put some effort into it. And also our swabhava also compels us to apply action. So no matter how we look at it, we cannot stop actions. And yet it says give up dharma, implying give up, stop actions. And therefore, what's the only other solution? Drop the notion that I am the dharmin, adharmin. Dharmin, adharmin just means I am the one that performs the dharma and the adharma. What performs the dharma, adharma? The body, mind does. I am free of that. Suppose we have a dualist who throws an objection. He says, what it means to give up dharma is really this. Give up dharma and just surrender to Krishna. Okay, then Advaita comes in and says, is surrendering to the Lord, is that a dharmic action or a dharmic action? It is a dharmic action, but that contradicts the original statement. It just says, give up dharma, and I'm supposed to surrender to the Lord, which is a dharmic action. The second meaning when it says give up dharma is what Krishna is maybe saying, give up your punya papa karmas, all of them. What does this imply? Sannyasa, take the life of sannyasa. Now, in those times in India, sannyasa was a common thing. Therefore, it could also mean that. Give up all duties that generate punya papa, and go become a sannyasi, and through that pursue moksha. Okay. Now, the question comes is, so it says, give up dharma. In other words, give up actions. And then I said, how so? By dropping the notions that I am the doer, the dharmin, adharmin. Then the next question comes is, how exactly do we do that? And then the next part of the verse answers, Mam ekam sharanam vraja. It says, take refuge in me. Before we answer what does take refuge in me mean, first of all, what does the word me mean? And we answered, we said it means Ishwara. And what is Ishwara? It is the intelligent material cause of the 5 elements, or if you want to call it, the periodic table of elements. In fact, there's a small difference, because periodic table of elements does not include, by the way, subtle matter like thoughts, the sukshma sharira, whereas the 5 elements model, the Vedic model, includes both the gross elements and the subtle elements. So what is Ishwara? Intelligent material cause. And then again, you go, but this intelligence material cause must exist, number one. Intelligence must exist, yes? To say intelligence, it means it exists. And for intelligence to put things together implies what? Consciousness, awareness. Therefore, again, what is Ishwara? Intelligent material cause. Both of them exist and are aware. Therefore, the final resolution is what? Sat Chit. So what does the word me refer to? Existence, awareness, Brahman. For example, right now, try to think of something minus consciousness. Think of this pen, please, without being conscious. Think of this hand without being conscious. Can't do it. We cannot think of anything unless we are conscious. And therefore, the consciousness principle is that which obtains throughout the entire universe. And when a consciousness principle obtains through your buddhi, we call that Atman, self. Then the question is, what does take refuge in me mean? The question is then, who is taking refuge? Yes, Bo.
Does that imply inertness?
Pen is inert, and there has to be something that is sentient,
Even
alive.
even the consciousness. Yeah, I mean, only consciousness is alive.
Yeah.
Everything else is inert.
In other words, it implies that
That-
everything depends on consciousness to be recognized, and therefore everything resolves into consciousness.
So cognition is the key.
Cognition of this fact.
Yeah.
Okay, in fact, I'll answer it now. So what does take refuge in me mean? The question is, who is taking refuge? If everything is one whole, then who is taking refuge in this one whole when it's already the whole? The buddhi, the brain. If you want to call it the brain, it's just one same thing. The buddhi is just shining through the brain. The brain is just a physical expression of the buddhi. Now, what does this brain or buddhi know? It's the 5 elements we just explained, which is the product of nimitta, upadana, karanam. But then what makes this brain conscious? What makes this brain aware? It is a different order of reality called satyam. And therefore, what does take refuge in me mean? It means this very buddhi that is listening to this understands the one that is listening is the 5 elements, but because there is listening, because listening is because of consciousness. And that consciousness is not different from the final macrocosmic called Brahman, the Brahman consciousness, Sat Chit. And then we can throw a few objections into this. Suppose a dualist comes in and they say, no, take refuge in me does not mean this whole consciousness principle. What it actually means is surrender your ego to Krishna. So if I surrender my ego to the Lord, then who's there left to recognize that my ego has been surrendered? Who's there left to enjoy that the process of surrendering is complete? Because you've surrendered your ego, right? Then what about me? Who's left to go, oh, look, my ego has been surrendered? Or suppose someone says, no, what it actually means, take refuge in me, it means surrender to the feet of the Lord. In a different language, you can say surrender to the altar of the Lord. Counter, where are these feet? What do these feet look like? What does the altar look like? How do I know whether it is the Lord's altar or a man-made altar? So in other words, why am I throwing this in? To show you that even though these statements sound relatable, it's very easy to speak like this. Just surrender to the Lord over there, isn't it? This is how we all speak. This is how most people speak. But it actually doesn't solve the problem. It gives an illusionary sense of surrender, right? Yeah, I'm surrendering to the Lord, but the individual still remains completely individual, still separate from the whole. Therefore, we have to look at these innocent statements and break them down. This is the beauty of Vedanta. It attacks everything that doesn't make complete rational sense. So saying that, let's move on to verse 67. So next section is Krishna's final remarks to Arjuna. Idam te na tapaskaya, na bhaktaya kadachana, na cha shushrushawe vachyam, na cha mam yobhyasuyate.
This teaching which has been taught to you is never to be taught to the one who has no religious discipline, nor to the one who has no devotion, nor to the one who is not willing to listen, nor to the one who finds fault with me where there is none.
So here Krishna is giving a warning. What kind of warning? To never mention the Bhagavad Gita, which is a product of karma yoga and jnana yoga, to the unfit mind. Why not? Because given it to the unfit mind, it will devalue the, as chapter 9 would say, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam, the king of knowledge, the king of secrets. For example, in defense strategies in army, suppose there is a defense minister. The defense minister, in order to protect his country, knows some key strategies, how to do so. But suppose that information gets leaked out into the public. What's going to happen? It's going to get released and be misused, disused, interpreted into what it's not, and therefore it will compromise the operation of something very important. I remember during the former president US, he was in Air Force One flying over Europe. And this is a secret operation. And someone looked up with their camera, with their phone, and they saw the blue plane, the Air Force One. And immediately, within an hour, it came onto Twitter and everyone knew about it. And it's supposed to be secret. Now, from the standpoint of the public, it's fun. It's a fun thing. Oh, look, I caught the plane. It's a fun thing to do. But it totally compromised the operation. Someone could have just shut down the airplane. So in other words, the moment something important leaks out into the public, by default, guaranteed, it gets misused and broken down. For this reason, Krishna warns, do not reveal the Bhagavad Gita to the unfit minds. In other words, before trying to save someone, because we understand we want to save people, we want to say, hey, we've got the greatest teaching in the world. Here's the Bhagavad Gita. Are they fit to receive this information? I have perhaps told a story some time ago of a friend that I knew since 2001 in Melbourne. And so we have a very long history here, started business together. We went, what is it, like years, 22 years now, right? 21 years. And it's really interesting watching each other's paths for these 21 years. He was into pseudo. I was also into pseudo at the beginning, a very young fella. But through the years, we could just witness how our email exchange starts to change, right? He's still sending me the chakra balancing, the aura healing, the kind of like various sound healing things. And it's all about energy cleansing and so on. And through this course of time, I witnessed, hey, both of us have gone and had equal opportunity. Both of us have had equal education for the most part. Both of us were business owners. Both of us are avid readers and researchers. And yet, 21 years later, or more like 2019, I told him about this knowledge, about the self-knowledge. And he listened, was very fascinated and go, wow, this is amazing. What happened 2 months later? The same emails as he always has were coming to me into my email inbox about aura balancing, chakra healing, sound healing, worldly success, and so on. If the person is not ready to receive this information, they will only go wow. Once the wow is over, they will recede back into their swabhava. Therefore, the person has to ascertain if this person is ready or not. Okay. Now, who is not fit to receive the Bhagavad Gita teachings? That means the Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Vachyam atapaskaya. The one who isn't religious. That means they don't do any religious practices or spiritual practices. So just a regular worldly person who is not into this, the Bhagavad Gita, there has to be a consideration before giving it to them, okay? Because they're not already engaged in some kind of practice. Na abhaktaya, the one who is purely intellectual, we call this material reductionist. In other words, one always wants to reduce everything down to the smallest particle in the universe. So if you want to say this to a scientist or suppose a material biologist who always has to see it under a microscope, then it's not going to go well at all. It could, we don't know, but this is what Krishna is saying. Nacha ashushrushawe, the one whose interest is mainly in aparavidya, that means worldly news and worldly knowledge. They're smart, very smart person. Would make anyone feel really small in contrast. But that's where it's all at. Nothing when it comes to consciousness or God or the Lord. It's all just, no, it's just all, stories, mind control and so on. Not to this one either. Nacha yaha abhyasuyanti. So the one who finds faults very quickly without asking. In other words, they're very quick to criticize without even asking. The one who provides an opinion and just leaves the trail of ignorance and then just leaves without even saying anything. Free will, there's no such thing as free will. Free will is an illusion. We all have limited decisions, limited choices. You will have the kind of life that you will have and you can't do anything about it. And I didn't even reply to this. I just removed the comment because na cha yaha abhyasuyanti. There we have a teacher who knows this vision, who understands the vision without even asking. He just left the comment and just leave without even asking, hey, can you tell me, I have this doubt. Can you tell me about free will? Just leaves it and then just leaves like that. Therefore, this person neither is qualified for the Bhagavad Gita. Or for example, we'll say that Krishna is arrogant in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is Krishna arrogant? Well, because he was talking about his glories in chapter 10 and 11. My mountains, my Himalaya, my sun. No, Krishna is not arrogant. He was just pointing out what is in order to uplift Arjuna. But this person, ironically, will interpret it like that. They too are not qualified. Okay, so in other words, you cannot force a flower to bloom prematurely, can we? If we do, the flower breaks. So in other words, we have to know carefully who is it that we are, that can we give this to. In other words, just let the person's karma exhaust without even answering the question. Just sometimes the best thing is not to say anything. Say, the Gita is about life. The Gita is about how to live a successful, meaningful life, but no need to say about consciousness and the Lord and all that. Just keep it very simple and casual. Let's state this positive. What are the qualifications for learning or even teaching the Bhagavad Gita? Tapas. What is tapas? Religion. What is religion? You have some devotional practice in your life, something that is consistent, a spiritual practice. What else? Bhakti, devotion to the Lord, devotion to the Guru, devotion to the teaching, devotion to something higher than just devotion to the world. A deep interest in the Bhagavad Gita study. Obsessed, can't let it go. Something's wrong with you, that kind of obsession. Okay, so you want to know and analyze the statements. You're hungry for knowledge. Who's hungry for knowledge? Who's hungry for knowledge? Hands up. Okay, good. We're all hungry for knowledge. You want to eat knowledge up completely. Open-minded and has faith. What does this mean? The one who is open-minded and pauses criticizing just for a moment until recognizes if there is something more to it than what I thought originally. So faith is just receding back to criticize and just saying, hold on, before I criticize, let me just attempt to look at it in that standpoint for a while, look at it if it's true for me. If not, then I will say something. Until then, I will see if it's working. Therefore, we remain like this for our whole life, open-minded. Okay, let's go into verse 68. So the next section will be 68 to 71, and Krishna will glorify the Acharya, the Shishya, and the casual listener of the Gita. 68. Ya imam paramam guhyam madbhakte shwabhidasyati bhaktim mayi param kritva mame vaishyatya samshayaha.
The one who teaches this most exalted secret, Shastra, to my devotees, having the highest devotion for me, will come to me alone. There is no doubt.
Okay, so these are short verses, and here Krishna is just acknowledging the expounder, the guru or the acharya of the Vedas. How do we know that? So yaha abhidasyati imam paramam guhyam. So the one who imparts the greatest secret, guhyam. Now the question is, why is the guru being glorified? What is the purpose of the universe? We said this already. I said the question, what is the purpose of the universe? The only purpose of the universe is to for the jivas to have a field in which they can play out their desires. They can exhaust their desires. What does the scripture say? To end that, to end the universe. And therefore the guru comes in and ends that repetition within this universe to get the jivas out of the universe, to get the jiva out of samsara. Why else is the guru being glorified? Because he's or she is propagating Sanatana Dharma, that which is evergreen, ever fresh. What kind of devotion does a teacher have? Kritva param bhaktim, highest devotion. Did you ever have something in your life that was so important to you that you just had to teach it? Or you had to share it? It was so good. You knew the value of it so much that you just couldn't help yourself but to share it to those that want to listen, that are open to it. It was a no-brainer. It was obvious. Right? And you couldn't think of teaching or saying anything else except that thing. Why is that? Because you've ascertained through your own mind how important that thing was. And therefore, you were helplessly sharing it to the few close ones. For that reason, highest devotion. That means the devotion, the Lord. One is in love with the Lord. Next verse is, Krishna says, out of the expounder, the teacher, that means the guru, the student, and the casual listener, who is the dearest to him? verse 69. Nacha tasman manushyeshu kaschinne priyakritamaha bhavita nacha me tasmad anyaf priyataro bhuvi.
Moreover, there is no one among the people who does a dearer service to me than him, nor will there be another on earth who does a dearer service to me than him.
So manushyeshu, among men, priyakritam te tasmat. So among men, and no one more pleasing than he, tasmat, than he. So again, Krishna says the dearest is the expounder, as mentioned in verse 68. Nacha bhavita anyaha bhuvi priyataraha me tasmat. And there will never be anyone in any position in the future that will be more dearer than the one who takes the position of teaching the word of God. Because again, you are doing the highest possible duty by providing the service. How is the Lord supposed to teach unless there is a mouthpiece through which his words can flow? He can't. And the whole universe exists only for the purpose of ending one's limited existence. And therefore, the Guru steps in and does that very duty. And then the next verse will talk about the student. And who is a student? The one that engages in consistent and systematic study of Vedantic scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a competent acharya. That is a student. Okay, verse 70. Adhyeshyate chaya imam dharmyam samvadam avayoho jnana yajnena tenaham ishtaksyam iti me matihi.
The one who studies or recites this dialogue of ours, that is unopposed to dharma through that ritual in the form of knowledge, I would be worshipped. This is my conclusion.
The one who studies or recites this dialogue of ours. Okay. Yaha adhyeshyate imam dharmyam samvadam. So we're talking about the student who studies or engages or contemplates on the dialogue, which is keeping with the Vedic teachings, that one. Not just one who just sort of cruises around from satsang to satsang, just picks up a little bit here, a little bit there, but stays in one class, one teaching, and follows a thread of continuity until ascertains the whole vision. That kind of student. Okay, what is this student that we're speaking of, or devotee of truth, what do they practice? Jnana yajnena. They are worshippers of jnana, means of knowledge by which I can recognize that I am free of limitations. In chapter 9, of course, we call this the Raja Vidya Raja Guhya, the king of knowledge, the king of secrets. That is what the student is a student of. And of course, Krishna backs this up in chapter 4, verse 33. He says that jnana is superior to all forms of other yajnas, any kind of other worships. Therefore, self-knowledge over and over is the means by which one is released. And what does the student throw into the fire of yajna, of the jnana yajna? You can't throw your body, then you still have to live out your karmas. What is the ego? Excellence. In other words, and that ego is the one that preserves its status as an individual. So I'm throwing my ignorance that makes me think that I am just this much. That is what we're throwing into the fire. Okay. In other words, mamakara, good bow. Mamakara, myness, the sense of my. Let's summarize this. So what Krishna is saying is that the student is engaging in the highest possible worship by studying the dialogue, dharmyam, between the guru and the student. In this case, Krishna and Arjuna. And then the next verse will talk about the casual student, the one that doesn't follow the scriptures, but just goes in and just listens passively. What about those? Maybe these are our kids. Maybe these are our families who are not that into this. Let's see what kind of, they don't want moksha. Let's see what Krishna has to say about them. Verse 71. Shraddhavanan asuyascha shrnuyad apiyo naraha sopi muktak shubhan lokan prapnuyat punya karmanam.
Even that person who merely hears this with faith and without criticism becomes free from sins. he shall attain the auspicious worlds of those who do good karmas.
So what kind of student is this? Yaha api shirnuyat shraddhavan cha anasuyaha. Anasuyaha means non-critical. So in other words, one who listens by a non-critical attitude, with an open mind, by faith, but they don't follow up with mananam and nididhyasanam. So in other words, you just come into the class and you go, okay, this is nice. Krishna, Arjuna, Lord, yeah, wow. Brahman, interesting. Okay, bye-bye, thank you. Next day, next week. Brahman, Ishvara, Upadana, Nimitta Karanam. Fantastic. Bye-bye, next. Okay, so those kinds of students who are still there, they're still open to listening, but they're not completely involved. Okay, and then what happens to such a student? Muktaha prapnuyat shubhan lokan punya karmanam. So shubhan lokana means a better world. Prapnuyat means should reach a shubhan lokan, a higher world. So in other words, what happens to them? They become free from sin and consequently attain shubhan lokan, higher worlds, better birth by swarga. How is this possible? Because by listening to the Gita, the person at least ascertains what is to be done and not done. Therefore, they are aligning oneself with the creator of the universe. And therefore, that brings a lot more success to the individual than if they're out of alignment with that order, with Ishvara's order. Okay, so either way, whether you're a teacher, a student, or a casual listener, there are benefits. So let's summarize the means to attain godhood, to attain moksha through verse 68 to 71. So let's take all of these verses that we just said. What are the ways to attain moksha? And this is a different way to look at it. Number one, we can listen to the Bhagavad Gita. This means listening to commentaries about verses that capture us. You don't have to listen to all verses, but those verses that really stand out, like chapter 4, verse 18, the wise one is the one who sees no action in action and so on. Go, what does this mean? And then you look at the commentaries on that verse only, and you study it, and then meditate on it. We could read the Bhagavad Gita. This is reading it out loud or mentally in a train or on a plane. We could chant the Bhagavad Gita. We could study the Bhagavad Gita. Adi Shankara in verse 20 of Bhaja Govindam says, even a little bit of Bhagavad Gita chanting saves one from the jaws of death. Studying, not chanting, but studying, even a little bit. We could write the Bhagavad Gita. This means writing commentaries. So again, you take chapter 4, verse 18, the wise one is the one who sees no action in action, and you write a commentary on that. Just write out something like a report. Imagine you're doing a report, you have to hand it to a teacher next day. You have to pass, get 8 out of 10 for that. So it kind of forces you, like, what can I say about this verse? What do I have to really say? How much do I know about this verse? We could translate the Gita. Okay, if we know Sanskrit, but you could do that also. You could translate into your own language. Why not? Take the English version and start translating it into your language. We could teach it to a single person or a group of people. Teaching it allows you to see how much have we grasped. We've probably heard of Sri Vinoba Bhave. I think the Indians will know this. The one who was arrested, freedom fighter in India, was arrested for his resistance. And in jail, he taught the inmates the Bhagavad Gita. He called it Gitai, Gita the mother, in jail. I was very inspired when I heard this. The next verse Krishna is now curious to hear what kind of student does Arjuna see himself. So how does Arjuna, after all of this, see himself, having gone through these 18 chapters? Verse 72, Kachid etat shrutam partha. Tvayaikagrena cetasa kachid ajnana sammohaha pranashtaste dhananjaya.
O Arjuna, has this behaved by you with one pointed mind? Has your delusion born of ignorance gone completely, or Arjuna?
Okay, Arjuna, did you destroy your initial ignorance and doubts about Jiva Jagat Ishvara? Arjuna, listen, did you destroy your initial doubts about Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara that you've had? What was Arjuna's original doubt in chapter 1? should I fight this war or not? And what was the origin of this question? Should I fight? What does fight mean? Should I act in this field? What is the best course of action? How should I act? Should I fight or not? This is a valid question. This fight, don't take it literally. It means it's a figurative. Should I engage in this thing? Should I go there or go there? And when? What was the origin of this question? The origin of this question is universal condition that all jivas share. And what is this universal condition that all jivas share? Number one, every jiva thinks that the self is the body, mind, intellect. And therefore, what does the body, mind, intellect do? It accumulates punya papa. So what was preventing Arjuna from going forward? He thought, if I kill these people, I'm going to go to hell. It's a valid question. Suppose right now there was a dictator, to-be dictator, and they were next to you, and you had a gun or a weapon. And you could see maybe in the future, hey, if I let him loose, they're gonna, create another World War III. And you're like, okay, so I gotta end their life. Otherwise, the whole world suffers. Would there be a genuine concern? You'd be like, but what about my parents? What are they gonna think of me? I'm a killer. Am I gonna go to hell? And I'm gonna get very embarrassed. What's my wife, children gonna think? And all of that reputation I've built, I've got to now let it go. Oh no, there's going to be genuine concern because the person thinks they're the body, mind, intellect. Therefore, they think I am doing it. And if I do it, it's going to produce punya papam. And therefore, I, the body, mind, will suffer. That is a universal condition that all jivas share. And therefore, this alone prevents people from taking or living out their lives fully because they think I'm going to get embarrassed as a body, mind. Right? I'm going to get ashamed as a body, mind. And that stops us from moving forward. That's condition number one. What's condition number two? Taking the world as satyam. The world that I see is the absolute truth. That's all there is to it. And therefore, the world becomes all about investing time, energy, and effort into making it perfect. Can we relate to this also? Trying to make things perfect in my life. Why? Because I think the world is an absolute reality worthy of perfecting, where the world is just a mirror, as though Brahman wearing a virtual reality headset for a while. And that world I'm trying to fix. Therefore, releasing this notion that the world is real automatically relieves one and therefore allows one to make more intelligent, informed decisions. As long as these two conditions are there, I'm the body, mind, intellect, and therefore there are consequences onto me, the body, mind, intellect. And number two, the world is absolutely real, and therefore I have to make it perfect. As long as these two conditions are there, all decisions get stifled, all decisions get hindered, all logic gets justified in the name of the body, mind, intellect. And therefore it prevents us from living out our lives fully. That's why I said last week, it is a huge statement to say you are truly free from this person. Okay. Now, Arjuna is going to answer Krishna's question, whether his doubts have been resolved. Verse 73, Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan maya chuta stitosmi gata sandehaha karishye vachanam tava.
Sri Arjuna said, by your grace, my delusion is gone, and I have gained recognition of myself. O Lord, Achyute Krishna, I remain as one from whom all doubts have gone. I will do what you say.
So here Arjuna is replying, and he says, gone is my delusion, my moha, my avidya. And how did this delusion go away? Smrtihi labdha maya, by recognizing who or what I am. How so? By means of knowledge. The word smrtihi here means memory. In other words, I have recollected that which I've always known all along. But I couldn't quite comprehend it because I needed some authority to tell me that my nature is awareness. For the case of, this is an example of excellent student. How have I recognized who, what I am? He says, Tvat prasadat, by your grace, Krishna. Not by my own efforts, I did it. By your grace, I needed your help. Therefore, humility comes in. How so? By a systematic teaching. But then a question comes, then how do we know that your grace is referring to a systematic teaching? What does systematic teaching mean? It means step by step, by step, by step, by step, until the problem is solved. Okay, who is Krishna speaking as? All knowledge. Now, suppose he's an avatar. It doesn't matter. An avatar is still not going to know how to fly an airplane. So he may not be all knowledge in a body form, but an avatar certainly can ascertain what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. That's why Krishna went to the Gurukulam, just like anyone else, to hear the knowledge, the Vedic knowledge. So who is Krishna speaking as, knowing that now? As the one who is in touch with all knowledge. What makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Now, knowing that, Bao, I will get to you in a second, knowing that if Krishna knew that saying Om Namah Shivaya 100,000 times is going to solve the problem, doesn't it make sense that Krishna would have taught that? Yeah. If Krishna knew that saying a mantra or Shaktipat or some other technique, the spiritual technique, was better and would solve Arjuna's problem, would the all knowledge would have not already provided that? Would all knowledge would have not recommended that? Of course. But Krishna didn't. What did Krishna do? He provided the entire systematic teaching through knowledge. So what does it say? There's no other solution to solve the problem than through self-knowledge. And what is the Bhagavad Gita? It is a yoga shastra, how to conduct ourselves in the world, and it is a moksha shastra, how to disidentify, how to remove the beginningless error that I'm a body, mind, intellect. Therefore, again, we're gaining reassurance that the only way to solve the problem is the very way that we have undergone in this course.
Would it be right to say that essentially Arjuna's doubt of Vishada Yoga was what is dharma and what is adharma? And Krishna finally clarified with examples and the step-by-step instruction what really means dharma.
Excellent.
Am
So
I right?
Yes, excellent. So what is this? Another way of looking at it? It's a highly informed way, because if we don't have a authoritative source, as we said before, something that's going to, like a checklist. If we don't have checklist in respect to authority, then we do not know how to make proper decisions. And therefore we get stifled onto what needs to be done. So therefore, Krishna taught what is true definition of dharma and what is a true definition of adharma. And what is inside the word dharma? Moksha also. In fact, that is the highest swadharma of all individuals. So that much I have now understood as Arjuna, and I go, so my dharma is not, my swadharma is not just to be a good person in this world. It is also to free myself from the very person who's trying to do good. Arjuna says, Krishna, or Hey Krishna, asmi stitaha gata sandehaha. I have no more conflict. I have no more doubts. I would do my assigned duty by participating in the field of action. According to my nature, this is just what Bao was saying exactly. I have no more inner conflicts pertaining to dharma, adharma. I would do my assigned duty in this field of action, participating fully, thinking intelligently at all times, according to my swabhava. What did Arjuna say in chapter 1, by the way? He said, Krishna, I will not fight, but I will listen to you. What is Arjuna saying now? Krishna, I will fight, because your logic, having heard the whole discourse, makes a lot more sense than my own. For that reason, because my mind was open enough, having faith to listen, I will now do as instructed. And so, Karishye vachanam tava, I shall do as you say. He could be saying this to Krishna, the physical person, and the avatar. You could interpret this in that way. You could also say this, Arjuna is saying this to his conscience, to that inner voice that finally persuaded Arjuna to say, okay, you now know exactly what to do, go and do it. The problem has been solved. And therefore, Arjuna's little inner voice, the buddhi, says, go, you are safe. You're not making the wrong decision. You're making the right decision. Go. And at this point, Arjuna prostrated to the feet of the Lord in sheer gratitude. He got up, he looked Krishna into his eyes, and then he turned his head towards the battlefield, and he went and he did his duty, knowing exactly how and why. And then the war began. The life begins only now, being educated from the Lord's word how to conduct oneself. Only now Arjuna goes and does life properly. Okay, the last 4 verses. This is Sanjaya's final remarks to Dhritarashtra. Verse 74. Sanjaya uvacha ityaham vasudevasya parthasya cha mahatmanaha samvadam imam ashrausham adbhutam roma harshanam.
Sanjaya said, thus I've heard this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna of great mind and heart, which is wonderful and makes one's hair stand on end, goosebumps.
Indeed, goosebumps. So here the scene of the battlefield is over. And the question is, who is Sanjaya? So the Sanjaya is the charioteer of, or the right-hand man of Dhritarashtra. And then who is Dhritarashtra? He is the father of the Kauravas. He's the uncle of the Pandavas, and he is the king of Hastinapura. And Sanjaya was an ideal example of a karma yogi. Why? Because Sanjaya was serving a corrupt king, but Sanjaya actually knew that he was only serving the Lord. And therefore he was able to stay in that relationship, knowing it is toxic. Imagine the kind of strength one requires for that. Knowing the relationship is toxic, the person I'm serving is corrupt, and yet I'm serving the Lord. And because of this much capacity from Sanjaya, he was thus blessed the divine vision by Vyasa, by which he was able to see remotely the entire battlefield taking place and all of the thoughts that were taking place in people's minds. Okay, and then Sanjaya says here, I have heard this dialogue, this brilliant dialogue between Krishna and Mahatma, that is Arjuna, and having heard it, it made my body hairs erect. It gave me goosebumps. And then the question is now, how did Sanjaya hear this dialogue at a distance? And now let's chant verse 75, 76, and 77 together, because they are very short. Vyasa prasada shrutavan etad guhyam maham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat katayatav swayam rajan samsmritya samvadam imam adbhutam keshavarjunayo punyam harshyami cha muhur muhuhu tacha samsmritya rupam atyadbhutam harehe dismayo me mahan rajan harshyami cha punaha.
By the grace of Vyasa, I've listened to this secret and ultimate yoga from Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, directly teaching himself. O King, repeatedly recalling this wondrous, auspicious dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I rejoice again and again. Further, repeatedly recalling the most wondrous form of the Lord Hari, I have great amazement, O King, and I rejoice again and again.
Vyasa prasadat etat param guhyam. So here, Sanjaya was blessed by Vyasa, by what's called Divya Chakshuhu, the eye of extrasensory perception. And thus he could hear this supremely secret knowledge at a distance. And then adding Yoga Krishnat Swayam Yoga Eshwarat. Furthermore, Sanjaya feels blessed that he heard directly from the Lord himself, who is the Lord of Yoga. Because to hear something directly from the Lord without a mediator in between, that is a big deal. That is something special. And then verse 76, Sanjaya says that he feels grateful and cheerful for hearing this sacred dialogue between Arjuna, who represents, by the way, the beginningless seeker, and Krishna. And then Sanjaya further says his favorite chapter was 11 in verse 77. He says, Samsmrtya tad ati adbhutam rupam harehe. So Sanjay says that what stood out for him most was the wonderful universal form, the Vishwarupa form, which consists of all forms in the universe, otherwise called Harihi. All forms of Harihi, otherwise called Ishwaraha. And this made Sanjaya overwhelmed with ineffable bliss, seeing the vastness, the true vastness, not just words, but really experiencing the beauty, the wonder, the greatness, the bigness, the unimaginable wonder that Ishwara, that God is. And he's witnessed that firsthand. And for that reason, Harshyami Punaha Punaha. By this, that means chapter 11, by this vision, I rejoice again and again and again and again and again, seeing how much there is to look forward to for Videha Mukti. That means a Jivan Muktaha who drops the physical body, seeing how much there is to look forward to reclaim one's true nature, one's true Ananda, limitless Ananda, one's boundless love. And then the next verse, the final verse, Sanjaya will conclude the Bhagavad Gita. And who would like to have the honor of reading the last verse? Okay, Goknur. Oh, Meena, sorry. You were 1 second late. Okay, we'll have Goknur. Let me just chant it.
I've already read, so Meena.
Oh, okay, well, okay, Meena, okay. But let me first chant it. Yatra yogeshwarah Krishnaha, yatra partho dhanurdharaha, tatra shrir vijayo bhutihi, dhruva nitirmatir mama.
Wherever there is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, wherever there is Arjuna, the one who bears the bow, their wealth, victory, various riches, and definite justice are present. This is my conclusion.
So a last verse is always significant. And for that reason, instead of just giving you one interpretation of what this significant verse says, we will give you several. There's two words here, Krishna and Arjuna. Now you have to ask, what does Krishna and Arjuna represent? Because that's another teaching in itself. One interpretation is to say that Krishna represents the spiritual knowledge, otherwise called Paravidya, the higher knowledge. The word para in Sanskrit always means higher and apara means lower. So Krishna represents the spiritual knowledge, the knowledge of the truth, the knowledge of God, the knowledge that connects the Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. And Arjuna represents the secular knowledge, Aparavidya. Now, if you bring Aparavidya and Paravidya together, spiritual knowledge and material knowledge, then what do you get? And then the verse goes into Shrihi, Vijaya, Nitihi, and Bhutihi. If you combine these two together, what do we get? We get Shrihi, lasting wealth or resourcefulness. Why do we have lasting wealth? Not just money, but wealth just means resourcefulness. You're able to draw resources from within, joy from within, because all your actions are backed by righteous means. And to comply with righteous means is to comply with Ishwara. Therefore, to receive Ishwara's grace, Ishwara's prasada, as we've already spoken about. It also leads to victory, Vijayaha. It means I've settled accounts with the world relatively, not completely, because it's impossible to completely settle accounts with the world. I've relatively settled accounts with the world and also with my own inner conflicts. Doing these two leads to Vijaya, victory. Can someone enjoy victory if they still have inner conflicts going on? Even if you do, if someone says, hey, you're so successful, but the person doesn't feel like it, then it's as good as saying, I don't have victory. Therefore, one who has resolved inner conflicts, but also settled accounts with the external world. It also leads to nitihi, justice or fairness. Justice or fairness is that which provides the moral fiber in a society. It provides firm governing policies. If the government runs their nation by pure standards of materialism and secularity, of giving quality of life, but reducing culture, then what's going to happen? The people will find ways to be unhappy because you need to bring that paravidya, that higher knowledge of God, in order for a person to start to be satisfied, because we're always asking for that knowledge. In fact, it reminds me, sometime in Russia, I believe in the 1900s, early 1900s, one of the rulers, the presidents of Russia, pulled out religion for some reason. And people very soon found they were not at all happy with this decision. They just found ways to violate and still build these religious centers all around Russia, because they wanted to reconnect and think of something divine. And this was said, this experiment showed, or this phenomena showed, that people have this inherent need to connect to something higher. So when you take that out, then there is no justice or fairness. If you bring that in, there is nitihi, justice or fairness. And finally, it leads to prosperity, bhutihi. What leads to prosperity? All these prior three being there. All these prior three equals prosperity. Now, what did Duryodhana ask from Krishna? This is another symbolism. He asked only for apara vidya, apara prakriti. Krishna, I want your army. What did Arjuna say? Krishna, I want you. Arjuna already had what? Secular knowledge. He already had material success. But Arjuna asked for spiritual success, spiritual knowledge. And therefore, Arjuna succeeded. But Duryodhana fell because he only asked for what he already had, which is more materialistic desires, more materialistic satisfaction. Therefore, the entire society, like this, collapses, as did the Roman Empire, by neglecting the higher knowledge, paravidya. Okay, that was interpretation one. Interpretation two, Krishna represents renunciation. What does renunciation mean? Reduction of ownership, sense of mamakara, reduction of ahamkara, grabbing and latching. It is my. I want to own you. I want to own you. I want to own you. Reduction of that. That is what Krishna represents. In other words, sattva guna. Whereas Arjuna represents action. You cannot just be relaxed, renounce the world, and not do anything. Is that going to lead to a successful life? Not at all. We call it a spiritual bypassing, just kind of chilling out and not doing anything. So Krishna means sattva guna. You have enough clarity not to latch onto things, not to take ownership of things, but at the same time, you have enough motivation, enough energy in you to go and be involved in the world, to pursue one's inherent desires that are there to serve the community. Therefore, bring them together, Krishna renunciation and Arjuna action, and you have bhutihi, prosperity. Interpretation 3. Krishna represents Saguna Ishvara, Saguna Brahman, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of all. And what does Arjuna represent? The karma yogi who is trying to attain that, who's trying to know that. In fact, can you have Krishna without Arjuna or Arjuna without Krishna? Can we have a wave without the ocean or the ocean without the wave? No, they're actually one and the same. When you say the word ocean, it's nothing but the totality of all of the waves. But the only difference is the wave, that means one jiva needs the ocean, but the ocean does not need the wave. Therefore, what does this mean? If that one wave, one jiva, aligns itself with the injunctions as ordained by Ishvara, propounded in the scriptures, mentioned in the scriptures, then that one wave will attain bhutihi, prosperity, will attain success. And therefore, when that wave falls one day, having attained that prosperity, will no longer be finding oneself into another one small wave in this vast ocean of more waves. In other words, that one wave upon its fall, the jiva upon its fall, will enjoy not only the ocean, but is also going to enjoy the water. The jiva muktaha, upon its death, not only enjoys Ishvara, but also enjoys Brahman. Not that there are two realities, understand this, because they are one and the same looked at from two different standpoints. So in other words, the jiva upon the fall, the jiva muktaha upon its fall enjoys all knowledge, all power, as existence, awareness. What kind of existence, awareness? You don't just stop there, as one that is boundless, infinite, boundless love, ineffable bliss. And thus the jiva muktaha then reclaims one's nature, no longer conditioned by the one single body, mind, intellect, upadhi, Therefore, one enjoys one's limitless, boundless, infinite, incomprehensible, inexplicable, unparalleled, unmatched brightness, fullness, vastness, being oneself, the one entity for all eternity, never again to return as one single individual. And then interpretation 4. Since most who are reading the Bhagavad Gita are not interested in moksha, believe it or not, then Krishna says, no, it's a backup plan here. Doesn't matter. Even if you don't want moksha, you will still have all of these Shrihi, Vijaya, Bhutihi, you will still have all of them. You will still have worldly benefits. And therefore, Krishna also could mean that. So it depends on what interpretation we take it. Final conclusion, and then we close. What's the first word in Bhagavad Gita?
Dharma.
Dharmakshetre. Kurukshetre. Chapter 1, verse 1. What's the last word in Bhagavad Gita?
Mama.
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 Okay. Mama Dharma. The whole Gita is about Mama Dharma, my duty. What does this mean, my duty? It means my duty towards myself, to free myself from the sense of limitation, my duty towards my loved ones, my duty in work, my duty towards all beings as long as I am alive. And being the highest duty of all, it is moksha itself. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is about Mama Dharma, my duty. And this sums up and concludes our long course. I do not close until we summarize chapter 18. So this will happen next week. And I'll tell you why summaries are important. Because in 5 years from now, we will forget most of these concepts. The easiest thing to do to refresh is just to look at the summary video. And that will just bring up, like watering the seeds of knowledge. And then we'll just bring up all of this knowledge again. So next week, I will summarize chapter 18, once again covering the important concepts, and that will give us the big picture. And also next week, if you don't mind, if you would like, you can share what chapter has most impacted you in the Bhagavad Gita, or one single concept that for some reason is with you in your mind all of the time and you can't get it out. What is that one concept that has stuck out the most out of all things? That is there throughout the day when the times are hard, when the times are easy. It's just there for some reason. Can't explain it why, but it's still there. What is that one thing? I would love to hear. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. And let me just chant the last verse. Om Tat Sat Iti Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Tsu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Moksha Sannyasa Yogo Nama Ashtadasho Dhyayaha. Brahman is the only reality. Thus ends the 18th chapter called Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, having the topic of the freedom and renunciation in the Bhagavad Gita, which is in the form of a dialogue between Shri Krishna and Arjuna, which is the essence of the Upanishads, whose subject matter is both the knowledge of Brahman and yoga.